the headquarters of the Libyan and the Gaddafi forces. We are close to this area, and they are only maintaining around 5 square kilometers from Bab al-Azaziyah. But thank God, we are surrounding some of the other areas, and it's a vital point, Al-Jumhuriyah Street. It's the street that went and goes to the western side of Bab al-Azaziyah, the headquarters of Gaddafi and his forces. And we are dominating a huge part of Al-Jumhuriyah Street. But the weapons are not enough, the ammunition are not enough, the capabilities are not enough to control the whole of the street and to reach Bab al-Azaziyah. Yes.
What have you been hearing about the rebel advance into Tripoli? I mean, have you also heard about the fall of Brega, Zlatan, Zawiya?
Most of the fighters, most of the civilians, all the citizens are in the streets, and we've listened from time to time from some of our brothers these news, and when we've listened to this news, the streets are really appreciated and happy, and the mosques are saying these news. We are really happy to listen to this news, and a few minutes ago we have got some news regarding the progress of the fighters towards Zawiya, and we are, monitoring the situation. We will really be happy to open our arms to the fighters who are about to come, and we are against all these Gaddafi forces.
Okay, Abu Bakr al-Tarabolsi, thank you very much indeed for talking to Al Jazeera. Before we go back to Jackie, let's just bring you some of those live pictures we were seeing earlier of Freedom Square in Benghazi, the rebel stronghold. Thousands of people pouring into the square, waving flags, chanting at the news that the rebels are poised to take the Libyan capital, Tripoli. We've been talking to our correspondent in Benghazi, Jackie Rowland. Jackie, let's just come back to you. We were talking there to that activist in Tripoli saying that people are coming out onto the streets after iftar, etc., which just underlines the point you're making. So it's not so much that it's fighting with the rebels, it's more that people inside Tripoli are celebrating.
Yeah, what we're seeing really is almost like a kind of fifth column, a silent group up until now, and hardly surprising when you bear in mind the real lockdown, the real vice-like grip that Gaddafi and his supporters had pretty much until tonight on that city. Anyone who was to try to attempt to display any kind of dissent would really have been foolhardy, certainly on a potential suicide mission. But I think what we've seen is the advances, the significant advances that the rebels have made, particularly Zawiya. The people in Tripoli knowing that the rebel forces from outside have been getting closer has emboldened opposition elements within the city itself to actually come out onto the streets and in some cases take up arms as well. If we can carry on talking about the military side of things, Darren, I mean, we were just listening to that other guest who was talking about street-to-street fighting, more or less. What we've heard has been about clashes at Maitiga Air Base. That's the air base actually in the city of Tripoli rather than the international airport, which is to the south of the city. We've heard about fighting there, clashes, and also elsewhere in Tajoura district, which is really the easternmost suburb of Tripoli. We've also heard about NATO airstrikes on Tripoli. One eyewitness told Al Jazeera that he heard at least 3 strikes. So it does appear that NATO, this alliance that came together of countries that have been taking part in the bombardment that started towards the end of March, they really do appear now to be pretty much stretching this mandate of protecting civilians. I have to say on this night, it really does look increasingly as though they are acting like the air wing, the air force, if you like, of the rebel forces advancing both against Tripoli and rising up inside the city. All
right, Jackie Rowland there in Benghazi. Jackie, thank you. Now, rebels have cut off vital supply lines to the capital, Tripoli. They control Zawiya and Zlatan. Andrew Simmons watched the battle for Zlatan unfold.
The road to Zlatan, a journey of human loss and tactical gain, 10 kilometers. And they kept on going, facing an onslaught of heavy firepower, destruction all around. Ahead, NATO airstrikes, the big guns and tanks eventually silenced. highly organised but ugly in execution. Like any warfare, the grief soon merges with elation for one side. And this battle belonged to the opposition. 5 hours of fighting, a formidable Gaddafi force for so long, fizzling out with defeat so quickly. After more than 2 months, this is a sight many opposition fighters thought they wouldn't see. The centre of Zliten, just a kilometre down the road. It isn't possible to move right now because snipers are in the area. They've paid a heavy price to get this far. The fighters, you can see here, 24 of them in the early stages died. 26 was the figure a short time ago. Big losses, many casualties, up to 100 so far. And it did get worse. 36 fighters confirmed dead as we drove into the city. The snipers from these buildings had gone. Seemingly empty streets until we reached the centre of town.
The freedom fighters came to feel that we get freedom finally here in Zliten. Wow!
Amongst them, non-fighters, and trying to get away, families unsure what will happen next. The fear of a Gaddafi-forced counterattack gripping those who never wanted it to come to a fight here in their hometown. But not for these people. One man trying to express his feelings in broken English.
42 years. We have been smiling. We don't smile. We cannot smile. Now we are
Gaddafi, go away!
Libya free! Something Gaddafi, go away!
Many of these fighters are from Zliten. At an agreed time, they rose against the troops that kept them here and jailed many of them. Small numbers with limited weaponry. They now join the force that won freedom in Misrata 4 months ago. What comes next is the road to Tripoli. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera, Zliten.
Well, rebels have also consolidated their position close to Zawiya. That's just to the west of the capital, Tripoli. Zaina Hodder was there.
Some of the fiercest fighting happened here. Zawiya city center was the stronghold of Gaddafi's army. Its snipers, dozens of them, kept the opposition fighters from advancing east towards Tripoli. They took quite a few of them out. The rest of Gaddafi's men were pushed back when rebels stormed the square late on Friday.
For over a week, battles raged in and around Zawiya city center. Now the people of this coastal city are burning Gaddafi's green flag. They're calling this a major victory. And when you talk to them, they say this is the beginning of the end of Gaddafi's rule.
It was a hard-won fight. Many civilians have been killed over recent days. Others were trapped.
When Gaddafi's men were here, they used heavy weapons. Civilians in this area couldn't flee.
Nor could they use the city's main hospital. It was under the control of Gaddafi's fighters. Their casualties were treated here by the medical staff who weren't allowed to leave. Many of the patients were moved when opposition fighters launched their push into Zawiya a week ago, but a few others like Ahmed weren't stable enough to leave.
There were clashes around the hospital for days. We weren't allowed to leave. Around 100 of Gaddafi's men were guarding this hospital.
The rebels are now in control, but Gaddafi hasn't given up. A Grad rocket hit the hospital early on Saturday, destroying the operating rooms. Government soldiers may have retreated from some neighborhoods, but they still control the eastern entrance of Zawiya, and they are striking back. Shells continue to land indiscriminately in the city, but for now, neither side can claim victory. Zaina Hodder, Al Jazeera, Zawiya.
Well, I'm joined now by Bashir Soweli, a Libyan activist who's been involved in the uprising. Bashir, events moving thick and fast tonight. As we were talking to Jackie Rowland in Benghazi there, emboldened residents of the capital Tripoli now coming out onto the streets on the news that the rebels are on the outskirts of the capital Tripoli. Is this the end game? Is this the final countdown?
This is it. This is it. This is what we call the 0 hour. Actually, it started just after sunset this evening. Mosques have started chanting Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and then people went out in the streets. There was a deadline, which was the 20th of August, and then all the people were out in the streets. The reports that we're hearing now that the complete areas now under the control of the freedom fighters inside Tripoli, like Souk al-Jum'a. There's still some pockets of resistance in and around, especially around the Bab al-Aziziyah compound, where Gaddafi used to be there. The latest reports we heard that some of the guards there at the Bab al-Aziziyah compound are firing anti-aircraft guns against the pro-democracy forces. Darren, remember, this is before even the pro-democracy forces from outside of Tripoli are coming in. So this is pretty much what we call a rebellion within the city, within Tripoli. So I think this is it. I think it's going to be very exciting what's going to happen in the next coming hours.
So are you saying then that these are opposition forces, sort of sleepers, as you seem to suggest, who are in the capital, and there's an uprising in the capital, independent of the opposition forces coming in from places like Ziltan, Azawiyah and Brega?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, they have not been sleeping. I mean, we always hear about this guerrilla war they've been launching against the Gaddafi forces for months now. But what happened now, that this is the 0 hour, of course, this is happening, remember, in coordination, first with the pro-democracy forces outside of Tripoli and also with the NATO. So NATO are aware of what is happening. The latest report we had that the NATO hit at least 3 targets inside Tripoli. We don't know how many targets will be hit in the next coming hours. But what we know for sure, this is the final countdown. We don't know anything about the whereabouts of Gaddafi is unknown. The whereabouts of Abdullah Sanusi and his son and the complete command and control center inside Tripoli is unknown. The people who are still fighting against the people inside of Tripoli now are small officers. I mean, they're not really high officers. They still launch some attacks from time to time, especially at some of the checkpoints. But what we know for sure that this is not pretty much